The little adult. The first thing that happens is that you grow up fast, maybe too fast. When you're an only child, the people you spend the most time with aren't other kids. They're adults. Your parents, their friends, and relatives at family gatherings. You're constantly surrounded by grown-up conversations, grown-up jokes, and grown-up problems. So your brain adapts. You pick up a bigger vocabulary earlier. You learn to hold a real conversation with an adult by the time you're 7. You start to think more maturely, because that's the world you're modeling yourself on. Psychologists sometimes call this being a little adult. And on the surface, it's a superpower. Teachers love you. Adults are impressed by you. You're articulate and self-aware in a way a lot of kids your age just aren't. But here's the quiet cost. When you're more comfortable around adults than around kids, you can feel like an outsider with your own peers. The games feel silly, the drama feels pointless. You're not better than the other kids. You're just operating on a slightly different wavelength, and it can be lonely. A lot of only children carry that feeling into adulthood. That sense of being slightly out of sync with people your own age. Of being the mature one in every friend group. It started here, at the dinner table, surrounded by adults, learning the rules of a world you weren't quite old enough for yet. The inner world. Here's something only children share that almost nobody talks about. You have an unusually rich inner world. When you don't have a brother or sister to fill the silence, you have to entertain yourself. So you do. You invent games. You build entire stories in your head. You have full conversations with imaginary characters, or with yourself. Your imagination doesn't just grow. It becomes your main source of company. And this builds a skill most people are terrible at. Being alone without being bored. While a lot of adults can't sit by themselves for 10 minutes without reaching for their phone, you learned how to enjoy your own mind as a kid. Solitude isn't scary to you. It's where you recharge. It's where you do your best thinking. This is why so many only children end up being creative, independent, or deeply self-reflective. That inner world you built when you were 5 never went away. You just got better at living in it. But there's a flip side, and you probably already know what it is. Because you're so comfortable alone, you sometimes choose to be alone when you actually need people. You retreat inward when things get hard, instead of reaching out. The same skill that makes you self-sufficient can quietly make you isolated, and we'll come back to that later, because it connects to one of the heaviest effects on this list, the spotlight effect. Now we get to the one that shapes your relationship with pressure for life. In a house with multiple kids, attention gets split. The parents' focus, their hopes, their disappointment. All of it gets spread across 2, 3, 4 children. There's a buffer. As an only child, there is no buffer. You are the entire show. Every good grade is fully celebrated, but every bad grade is fully witnessed. Every win gets the spotlight, and so does every mistake. There's no sibling to take the heat off you, no one to compare notes with, no one who knows exactly what it feels like to be raised by your specific parents. This does something to your brain over time. You become hyper-aware of how you're being perceived. You start to feel responsible for your parents' emotions, like it's your job to make them proud, and your fault if they're not. And this is where perfectionism is born. Not because you want to be perfect, but because, somewhere deep down, good enough never felt like an option. When you're the only one carrying your parents' hopes, the pressure doesn't get shared. It gets concentrated. A lot of only children grow into adults who are terrified of disappointing people, who tie their self-worth to achievement, who feel a stab of guilt over the smallest failure. If that's you, this is where it likely started, standing alone in that spotlight, with nowhere to hide, the achievement load. That spotlight doesn't just create pressure, it creates drive, and this one's actually good news. When all of your parents' time, money, attention, and ambition is focused on a single child, that child gets invested in a way that often pays off. There's more one-on-one conversation, more help with homework, more resources poured into your interests and education. And the research backs this up. Decades of studies, including the well-known work of psychologist Toni Falbo, who spent her career studying only children, have found that only children tend to score just as high, and sometimes higher, on measures of achievement, motivation, and intelligence, compared to kids with siblings. The old stereotype of the only child falling behind socially, it simply doesn't hold up in the data. So if you've always been ambitious, if you set high standards for yourself, if you push hard to be the best at what you do, part of that is the upside of being the sole focus. That concentrated investment becomes concentrated drive. But notice how close this sits to the last effect. Drive and pressure come from the exact same place. The same wiring that makes you ambitious can make you anxious. The trick, and it's a lifelong one for a lot of only children, is learning to chase your goals because you want to, not because you're afraid of what happens if you fall short. The sharing myth. Okay, let's deal with the elephant in the room. The stereotype you've heard your whole life, that only children are spoiled, selfish, and bad at sharing. You've probably had someone find out you're an only child and go, "Oh, that explains it." So let's actually settle this. That stereotype isn't modern psychology. It traces back over 100 years to an early researcher named G. Stanley Hall, who literally called being an only child a disease in itself. For decades, people just repeated it as fact. But when researchers actually tested it, running studies across thousands of kids, the spoiled, selfish only child basically disappeared. Tony Falbo's meta-analyses found that only children are well-adjusted, sociable, and no more selfish than anyone else. The stereotype was a myth built on essentially zero evidence. So why does it linger? Probably because only children sometimes do have a stronger sense of personal space and personal stuff. Because you never had to share a room, share clothes, or split your parents' attention. But that's not selfishness. That's just not having had the practice. In fact, a lot of only children become more generous as adults, almost overcorrecting, precisely because they never want to be the stereotype. So if anyone hits you with the spoiled only child line, now you've got the receipts. The science is firmly on your side. The conflict gap? Here's a subtle one that affects your adult relationships in ways you've probably never connected. Think about what siblings actually are, psychologically. They're built-in conflict partners. Kids with brothers and sisters fight constantly, over toys, over space, over who started it. And every one of those fights is reps, practice. They're learning, over and over, how to argue, how to lose, how to forgive, and how to share space with someone who annoys them but isn't going anywhere. As an only child, you didn't get those reps. There was no one to fight with at home, and then be forced to coexist with 5 minutes later. So conflict can feel unusually uncomfortable to you. A lot of only children either avoid confrontation completely, going quiet, smoothing things over, keeping the peace at all costs, or they struggle to let an argument go and move on, because they never practice the fight and then it's fine rhythm that siblings learn automatically. You might take disagreements harder than they're meant to be taken. A small argument with a partner or friend can feel like the relationship is breaking, when really it's just normal friction. The skill of, we can fight and still be okay, wasn't installed in childhood. Which means, as an adult, you have to learn it on purpose. The good news, once you know this about yourself, it's completely learnable. The people-pleaser wiring, remember. The little adult from the start, this is what they grow into. When you spend your childhood as the sole focus of two adults, you become an expert at reading them. You learn to detect the tiny shift in your mom's tone, the look on your dad's face that means, not now. You become hyper-tuned to adult moods, because their mood was the emotional weather of your entire home, and there were no siblings to share the forecast with. This makes you incredibly emotionally perceptive. As an adult, you can walk into a room and instantly feel the tension. You notice when a friend is off before they say a word. You're the one people open up to. But that same wiring has a cost. When you grow up feeling responsible for keeping the adults happy, you can become a people pleaser. You put everyone else's needs first. You over-apologize. You say yes when you're screaming no on the inside. You'd rather absorb the discomfort yourself than risk someone being upset with you. If you're the friend who's amazing at taking care of everyone, but terrible at asking for help, this is where it comes from. You were trained, very young, to manage other people's emotions. Now, the hardest skill you'll ever learn is letting someone manage yours. The caretaker weight. This is the heaviest one on the list, and it's the one almost no video about only children ever talks about. When you have siblings, the future is something you share. Caring for aging parents, the hard phone calls, the impossible decisions, the grief when it comes, all of it gets carried by more than one set of shoulders. As an only child, you carry it alone. There's no brother to split the responsibility with, no sister to call at 2 a.m. when something goes wrong. No one else on earth who remembers your childhood from the inside, who knew your parents the way you did. When they're gone, you become the last person standing who holds those memories. A lot of only children carry a low, constant hum of this awareness their whole lives. I'm all they have, and one day, I'll be on my own. It can show up as anxiety about your parents' health, as guilt for living far away, as a heaviness you can't always explain. If you've felt that weight, you're not being dramatic, and you're not alone in it. Even if it feels like the loneliest thing in the world, it's one of the most profound and least discussed parts of the only child experience. And naming it, just understanding that it's a real, shared thing, is the first step to carrying it a little more gently, the hidden gift. So we've covered a lot: The pressure, the perfectionism, the conflict gap, the weight. But here's what I want you to actually take away from this video. Because growing up as an only child isn't a wound. It's a unique set of tools. You are genuinely self-sufficient. You can sit alone with your own mind and be okay. A skill most adults never develop. You're emotionally perceptive in a way that makes you a remarkable friend. You're driven, articulate, and independent. And because you grew up choosing your relationships instead of having them assigned by blood, the friendships you build as an adult are often deep, deliberate, and fiercely loyal. You treat the people you choose like the family you didn't have. Every effect on this list has two sides. The same childhood that gave you the spotlight gave you drive. The same solitude that made you lonely made you strong. The work of being an only child as an adult isn't fixing yourself. It's learning to keep the gifts and gently retire the fears. You were never missing anything by not having siblings. You were just being shaped into a very specific kind of person. And honestly, it's a pretty extraordinary one.